Truth and Lies in American Education is a new film. We're going to talk about transgender advocacy, defending families, and government spending in education today on the Sam Sorbo Show. You've heard me talk about Mike Lindell, who I adore. You know, he's the inventor of My Pillow, and how that pillow has given me a good night's sleep that I need. In fact, I never knew how good I could sleep before I had my Pillow. Mike continues to roll out new offers on his products, and the latest one is on his towel sets. Towels aren't something you think about often. I never knew what I was missing until I tried the towels just last year. Now, you have all helped build My Pillow into the incredible company that it is today, and you've trusted Mike Lindell to give you a great night's sleep. Mike's now changing the game with his 6-piece towel set. The set's made with USA cotton, making it extremely absorbent, and yet still providing that soft feel you look for in a towel. The set comes with 2 bath, 2 hand towels, and 2 washcloths, typically retailing for $109.99. But for a limited time, you can get this set for the low price of $39.99, and that's using promo code Sam Sorbo. So remember, all My Pillow products come with a 60-day money-back guarantee. You just go to mypillow.com, click on the radio listener specials, to get this insanely low price of $39.99 on the towel set. You'll find deep discounts on other My Pillow products as well. So enter promo code Sam Sorbo, or you can call 800-625-5983. That's 800-625-5983 for these great radio specials. Hi, this is Sam Sorbo. I want to invite you all to join me at the Playbook for Home Learning Conference put on by Underground Education. There's a new community that started online called the Underground Education Community. You can find it by going to samsorbo.com. You can also find all the information about the conference, about how to approach education with your kids. Times are hard for parents right now. There's a lot going on in the schools that we don't like. But I'll tell you something, home learning is easier than you ever thought it could be and more fun than you ever imagined. So join me at the Your Playbook for Home Learning Conference this June 24-25 in Port St. Lucie, Florida, and we're going to have a great time. Go to samsorbo.com for more information on everything. I'll see you there. Welcome back to the Sam Sorbo Show. Sheri Few is the founder and president of U.S. Parents Involved in Education, USPI, which has 20 state chapters. It's growing rapidly, especially with everything that we are seeing coming out of the schools these days. And so she joins me now to talk about the fight that she has led for many years, trying to protect parents and children's rights in the schools. And now, of course, there's a new issue that has cropped up, and that's in the COVID relief money that's been squandered. Sheri Few, thank you for joining me on the Sam Sorbo Show.
Thank you, Sam. I appreciate you having me on.
So what's this news I hear about COVID relief money going to the schools, but maybe not in the way that you think it is?
Yeah, it's really astounding, but not really surprising if you've studied education policy, because it's common for the federal government to incentivize these nefarious pedagogies with federal funding. So under the guise of COVID relief funding, there was $122 billion spread out across the country. Every school district in the state took funding. And if you took the funding, you had to certify that you would advance equity and inclusion and teach social emotional learning, which those of us who have studied critical race theory understand that these are the buzzwords that really mean critical race theory, and social emotional learning is the tool that they're using to often implement critical race theory in the schools. So that's what's happening all over the country with the federal funding.
I'm appalled because you said it's $122 billion. Where is that money coming from?
Well, where most of the federal funds come from, I think they're just printing up fake money, and that's why our country is in such a deep debt because, we don't have this money, and it's going to be on the backs of our children and grandchildren to pay for this debt.
So what exactly are they doing with the money that is so outrageous?
Well, a lot of the school districts that I've researched in the state where I live in South Carolina, they're buying programs, virtual programs that teachers can use that helps them to embed what we call culturally responsive pedagogy throughout the curriculum. So it's in every subject, and teachers are trained. There's a lot of training that's happening with the money that trains the teachers to do that as well. So culturally responsive pedagogy is a term that you may not be familiar with, or some of your viewers may not.
No,
And that's
because
how they're,
Sheri, come on, they invent a new term every 5 minutes. I mean, it's crazy. They're just, oh, let's call it this culturally responsible pedagogy. Like, that's word salad to most people. What are we supposed to do with that?
yeah, it's pretty crazy. And unless you've studied it, and that's why our organization is, doing a lot to educate people on this issue so they know where to find the critical race theory in their children's schools. So it stems from critical theory, which is a Marxist theory that came out of the Frankfurt School and infiltrated all of our colleges and universities. So there's not just critical race theory, there's critical queer theory, critical feminist theory, critical gender theory. They're all put together under this umbrella of culturally relevant pedagogy. So what you have is on one side, you have oppressors, and on the other side, the oppressed. So the oppressed side under culturally responsive pedagogy is particularly males who are white, heterosexual, and even Protestants, even Christians are named oppressors under this pedagogy. And then on the opposite side, of course, you have every other race and ethnicity. You have LGBTQ. Females supposedly are oppressed. I don't know about you, Sam, but I don't feel too oppressed. And then, of course, there's what they note as minority religions. Those are oppressed. So that's what they're putting into the K-12 schools, embedding it across the curriculum.
It's almost like, with the oppressor versus the oppressed, it's almost like they're inventing a new war.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it is causing division, like our country isn't already so horribly divided. It is adding to that division. It's hate, and it's really evil. It's evil to be teaching children that, just because you're born a particular race, you fit into a category that's bad toward other people, or on the flip side, you're a victim and you're controlled by the other race. It's really sick and sad that we would put this in the minds of young children who don't
It
see
really
color
is.
and hate.
Ultimately, it's that your race, the color of your skin, or your gender, which interestingly enough is not able to be defined, but whatever it is, it defines you. We can't define it, but it defines you. Same thing with race, incidentally. And it reminds me, there was a book written about this war that was just never ending, and so you always had to just be on the side of the government because the government was waging the war overseas. But I don't think that I think that there's a development here that the war is actually being waged by the government against us.
You're absolutely right, Sam. And so that's why this issue is so important. Whether you have kids in school or not, whether you have grandkids in school or not, if you're homeschooling, it's important for you to be involved with this issue, because what's happening is we are educating the masses, and it's an intentional agenda. It's Marxist in its roots, as I mentioned, and the end goal is to change our form of government. So if you're an American and you love your freedom, you need to get involved with this issue and help us stop the liberal indoctrination of children in government schools.
And to that end, you've created this documentary that just came out.
Yes, we're very excited. As you know, it's been a lengthy project because you were involved early on. And so the new film documentary that was released last Friday is titled Truth and Lies in American Education. And it's an exciting expose. I say exciting because we have this wonderful cast of experts who are coming in to explain to the public that all of these things are happening. So not just critical race theory, which we have some great cast involved with that. Dr. Carol Swain, Dr. Duke Pesta, and one of our board members, Dr. Gary Thompson, who happens to be a Black child psychologist married to a white woman raising biracial children. So he really has a good perspective on this issue. So not only critical race theory, but we talk about the sexualization of children, and especially the heavy influence in the transgender ideology, the anti-American propaganda, the anti-Christian propaganda, and even the inaccurate history that's being taught in government schools. So the film, as I mentioned, was released on Friday, and people can find the film at our website, which is truthandliesfilm.us.
Truthandliesfilm.us, and you can see it there, which is what the way people are accessing their entertainment these days anyway, is just going to the internet and finding it there. Truthandliesfilm.u. Wait, you said .us?
That's correct.
Okay.
Truthandliesfilm.us.
Okay. Now you're a former educator, so to speak. What is the point, from your point of view, what is the point of all the sexualization of children?
Well, it's interesting. I got asked this question yesterday as well. And so, in my opinion, I believe it's much like the critical race theory, that it's an effort to destroy young people. And, it's really, Sam, it's
But
a battle.
destroy them how? Don't young people, like, shouldn't they, like, okay, maybe 6 is too young, but at some point they're going to have sex, right? So destroy them how? Like, what is the destructive nature of what they're doing in your estimation? And of course, I have my own answers, but I want to know
Right.
where you stand on all of this, and maybe you have a better way of explaining it than I do, or a different take on it.
Sure. So, the transgender influence that I mentioned earlier, one of the experts that we interview in our film is Bernadette Broyles, and she started a nonprofit organization called Child Parent Rights Campaign. And the sole focus of this organization is to defend families whose children have been groomed, counseled, even provided puberty blockers, and moving them towards a transgender identity behind their parents' back. So that's the sole focus of this organization, because there is such a great need across the country to defend parents like this. So you can only imagine how destructive that would be to a young child. In one case that they're trying, their siblings, an 11 and a 12-year-old boy and girl, who both have been groomed against their biological gender by the school district. And when the parents found out about it, because of a courageous teacher, they of course told the school to stop immediately. And the school responded, no, we don't have to, because the state guidelines give us the authority to do this. And so they filed a lawsuit. But it's crazy that they're doing this to young children. And so the other piece of this too, Sam, is that the abortion industry and condoms and contraceptives are huge money-making industries. So when they teach children sex education in government schools at young ages, they teach them that it's natural and it's normal to have sex outside of marriage, which results in high rates of teen pregnancy, which often end in abortion for these young girls. It's a money-making industry. Really sad to think about that. That's how Planned Parenthood profits from the sex education in schools.
And incidentally, we should point out that ever since they started this idea of teaching sex ed in schools in order, and they justified it by saying this was going to prevent teenage pregnancy, because knowledge is power, and we should be informing these young people. And of course, teenage pregnancy skyrocketed after that. And because this is a sort of a pet peeve of mine, you have to understand, when you get a young girl to become a client at, so to speak, become a client at Planned Parenthood, you kind of have a client for life, right?
Yes, yes. It's really unfortunate. And so if we are able to see through to the truth, we understand that what's actually happening, like you said, is that we see more teen pregnancies. So it's the flip side of what they say their goal is. And, I've been involved with abstinence education for a very long time. I've written 4 or 5 curricula that teaches children to abstain from sexual activity until they are married. And really, with the problems in the Black community, and again, I've studied this issue, and the idea that they're oppressed. Well, really, in the Black community, the biggest problem is children being born out of wedlock. Back in the 60s, 80% of Black children were born into two-parent families. And today it's the opposite. It's more than 70% are born into single-parent homes. And all the social sciences agree that children fare better in every measure of well-being when they're born into a two-parent family.
Yeah, it's very sad what they've what government policy has managed to do to the family unit. It's why I do what I do. It's why I'm doing my playbook for home learning conference that's coming up in June, because preservation of the family preserves children, and it helps them fare better in life, like you just said. So Sheri Few, if you'll stay with me, we'll take a quick break and come right back. The name of the movie is Truth and Lies in American Education. You can go to truthandliesfilm.us. That's truthandliesfilm.us. It's an excellent film. And when we come back, I want to talk about the lead character in the film, who Sheri knows very well. And also, I understand you have some comments on the Christians who have joined in this fight, but are sort of on the wrong side, and you call them Christian collaborators, and so I want you to sort of define that for us, and so we'll talk about that in just a moment when we come back. Quick break here. We've discovered, my husband and I, a great American company that supports our traditional values and also the work we're doing to rescue our culture from the lies of the left. So I want you to go check it out. It's called nutramedics.com. Nutramedics.com. And you can find there great health and wellness products that are derived from the rainforests. I've found that they work incredibly for me. I take their melatonin. I get a much better night's sleep with that. I also take their relax medics and their mood medics, which are, I don't know what they are, but they're this natural blend of herbs, basically, and really easy to take. They actually droppers, and I just love their products, and I love what they stand for, because they have a heart for this nation and they have a heart for people. And I don't know how you would have one without the other. And that's why maybe they have both. But I just love what they do. So go to nutramedics.com, and you can actually go to sorbo.nutramedics, and that's with an X, sorbo.nutramedics.com. If you use Sorbo at checkout, you'll get a discount on anything that you purchase there. So go check it out. Get a better night's sleep, get a better day, feel better about yourself. They've got a lot of great products there, including vitamins. I use them all, so trust me, it's great. Nutramedics.com. And thank you so much for listening. Welcome back to the Sam Sorbo Show. So my guest is Sheri Few. I've known Sheri for Wow, Sheri, I've known you for quite a while, actually. We met at a conference, education policy conference, actually, years ago, which strangely was sort of less focused on education, but what the people who went became very educated just by going to the conference. So it was weirdly named, but anyway, Sheri's been in education and been fighting for parents' rights and on behalf of children's rights, I should say. In fact, Sheri, and we're talking about her film, the latest film, which is called Truth and Lies in American Education, and you can go to truthandliesfilm.us. But I was going to tell you, Sheri, I wrote a short op-ed the other day called The Greatest Heist in U.S. History. No, The Greatest Heist in Human History. And I talk about the fact that the school is robbing the parents of the parental relationship with their child and robbing children of their relationship with their parents. And that the fact is that the parents are collaborators in this. They're actually there's a legal term for it that's not coming to me, but it means collaborator, somebody who they're complicit in the theft, even though it's a theft that's perpetrated against themselves. It's a very odd and fascinating kind of dynamic that I feel like I've uncovered, because they don't even know that it's happening. They think that they're getting some value in dropping their kids off. And so we started this conversation with the fact that all of this money is being printed by the government and going to the schools to indoctrinate children away from their parents and their parents' traditional values, say. But it's even more than that. Like, that's sort of like the slap in the face, the insult that makes the injury sting more. But the injury is really foundational. What do you say to that?
I agree with you, Sam. And so I think even in the film, when we interviewed, I love it was part of our trailer where you talk about how the school is driving a wedge between the parent and the child. And that's absolutely what's happening. And again, I believe this is an intentional agenda. They, we've even heard comments around the country. If you look at, the gubernatorial candidate in Virginia, who said that parents shouldn't have any say in their children's education. And of course, he lost that election because of that ridiculous comment. And, we flipped the whole state because of his awkward statement. But this is the attitude of many of the leaders in the schools. And, even several years ago when we were fighting Common Core, I remember I went to the State Board of Education to testify. I was signing up to testify. There were a couple of young teachers ahead of me, and they were talking to one another. And one of them said to the other one, she said, "If you're not a teacher, I don't think you have any say in this matter." And I looked at her and I said, "Really? What about a parent? Does a parent not have any say in their children's education?" But this is the attitude. You're either a part of the system or you're a part of the problem. And so, again, I believe it's an intentional agenda. And, the education.
And let's point out, it's a dictatorial system. So if you don't agree, even if you're a teacher, but you disagree with the agenda, you're out, which is, totalitarian in nature.
Right, right. Yes, then you're labeled anti-public education, which, to tell you the truth, that's sort of a badge of honor because it's become so ridiculous. And so you mentioned the educational policy conferences. Well, the things that I learned there, I probably go back 20 years going to those conferences. And it was such an eye opener to me. And I would come back to South Carolina and talk to people about the things I'd learned. And I was definitely the tinfoil hat lady. But everything that I learned out there has come to fruition. It is so blatantly in your face now. And one of the big issues that I learned from Donna Hearn, and of course, she passed away about 6 months after we were able to interview her for our documentary. She's such a wonderful, brilliant woman when it comes to education policy. She worked in the Reagan administration in the Department of Education.
Yeah, if for no other reason, people should see the film just to get a little bit of a glimpse of that, because she really was a powerful force, and she does a great job in your film, and I'm so glad you got her in there.
Yes, yes, me too. It was essential because she's the one who sounded the alarm about the workforce development form of education, which is alive and well in every school in the country. So,
okay, you need to define that
absolutely,
for
that's
the
what
audience
I'd like to
here.
do. So, workforce development sounds great, right? Doesn't everybody want their kid to be ready for the workforce? Well, it's not so great because what it is a scheme by the federal government to control the economy. So, what they've done is they've set up regional workforce boards all over the country where several states come together in a region, and the board includes educators and the business community. And then these individuals decide what the job needs are going to be for that region in the next 10 years. So think about how ridiculous that is for a moment. You can't predict. I mean, how could we have predicted where we'd be with technology, 10, 15 years ago?
Not only
So,
that, who are the idiots who are making these calls? I mean, we're not talking about, technological wizard and scientists. We're talking about bureaucrats, idiots who accidentally got appointed to a job.
right, right. And not only that, then you've got the business sector involved, and that they're only interested in meeting their own needs, which is pigeonholing kids into, factories and corporations and whatever their needs are. The Chamber of Commerce has really been a villain in all of this. They were pro Common Core, and they're interested in education only for their own needs and not in the best interest of children. So what happens is a child in fifth and sixth grade is surveyed. And so they're very young and they're surveyed. And based on the survey, they determine what career field that child should be in. So then from there, all of their courses are aligned with that career field. When they enter high school, they have to declare a major like we used to do in college, but it's in ninth grade now, and your major is your career field. And all of your courses align to that. And in some instances, they're even doing away with diplomas and just providing a certificate of mastery in this one career field. So then that child is stuck in that one career field. Instead of teaching classical core
Right.
academics and
Ability.
developing a child to learn how to think, not what to think, this is what they're doing, in addition to everything else we discussed with the indoctrination. So it's
It's
really
like,
becoming
it's,
destructive.
yes, it's destructive because it's very limiting. It's sort of like whole word reading. When they implemented that, they sold us that it was the newfangled methodology, even though it was completely untested. And what they realized after the fact, although I'm sure that they knew this going in, is that the end result was that it severely limited the child's ability to read. And so this idea that you take this newfangled technologically, advanced development thing and apply it to education, but it ends up severely limiting the children. They're doing it now in workforce development. So they've got this highfalutin, we know the future, we're designing for the future. And so we're going to help your child fit in. That's the whole, conformity is as the highest good in this system. We're going to help your child do that. And in fact, the end result is, again, putting severe limitations on the abilities of the child. And so the child is only prepared to do one thing, like you got one job and can't do anything else. And I talked about this. I was at a quick event last night, and I gave a very short little speech about, it was actually to promote my conference, but what I talked about was the idea of creativity. And just briefly, the US government discovered that the pilots who got shot down and the spies who got caught typically were the best and the brightest, the best of the best, which is not what you would think. You train them to be the best. They shouldn't be the ones that get shot down or the spies that get caught. But in fact, what turned out was the best of the best are the people who perform well on the tests. They learn the book by heart. They know exactly what they're supposed to do. And when they do the thing they're supposed to do and it doesn't work, they go into failure mode because they have no other ideas, because their creativity has been squashed to the point of debilitation. And so they get caught or they get shot down. Whereas the mediocre kids who go through the program, they're like scrappy. Their creativity is still a little bit intact. And so they survive. And it's an amazing thing. Workforce development is really the application of that false ideology that that somehow by limiting the scope of the education of a child, you will produce a robot that can perform a task. And of course, that's their goal. They want robots. So what do people learn when they watch this film? And ultimately, what is your goal? I mean, you spent a long time, you guys put a lot of money into this and a lot of effort. And by the way, let's not bury the lead here. The lead cast member in the film is Sheri's own daughter-in-law, April Few, who did really a remarkable job, basically playing an audience member, in the sense of, I just wanted to find out more. Sheri told me a couple things that just didn't seem realistic. She was the tinfoil hat lady, right?
That's right.
And so April said, okay, let me just go on a search and talk to people. And you teamed up with Joaquin, who is a producer on the film. He did a film called Indoctrination years ago. That's how I met him, and that's how I know him. And he's just aces. He did an amazing job on this film. What's the takeaway? What are you hoping for from this movie?
Well, our goal is to have it distributed widely so that every American who's interested, and those who may not even know that these things are happening, will become informed and then take action. Because after you realize how bad it is, as I mentioned earlier, it's ultimately about our country's freedom. So it's not just for parents of kids in government schools, although we want to certainly inform them. And we recommend that they do anything but put their kids in government school today. They need to understand, and we want to grow a grassroots army across the country. Our organization right now has 20 state chapters, and we're growing rapidly because of the things that are in the culture now that are being exposed about government schools. But once they see this film, I think that everyone's going to understand the urgency of the matter. And so we want to have a chapter in every state and grow this grassroots army. And why that's important is our goal as an organization is to end the federal Department of Education and all federal education mandates, because we understand that that's where the most of the nefarious pedagogy comes from. Again, incentivized by federal dollars, which is what we started out the show talking about with the federal funding. And even though the federal government only controls on average about 10% of each state's education budget, they actually control 100% of the classroom. So we're working on projects where we're trying to get states to begin to wean themselves off the federal dole. And then on the national level, once we have control of Congress again and a Republican president, we hope to really push to close the Department of Ed. So with our state chapters, the people that are involved are like-minded. They understand the urgency of the issues. And so we hope that the film will impact people so that they will go to our website, that's uspie.org, and join the movement. And once they join the movement, we can connect them with other people in their state who are like-minded, so we can all work together to put an end to this indoctrination of children in American schools.
Yeah, I've stopped calling it indoctrination. It's just child abuse, full stop, plain and simple.
There you go. That's very good. I like that. And so indoctrination has been a word that I hadn't used as frequently as I have lately. So maybe I need to step it up like you and call it what it really is, child abuse.
Well, if you think about it, indoctrination is the instilling of a doctrine, and a doctrine is a worldview. And so the indoctrinate, like I've indoctrinated my children in the proper worldview. They're
Right.
indoctrinating children in a different worldview. So it's almost, that's sort of their job. It's just they're doing such a poor job of it because their worldview is antithetical to our worldview and to freedom and to America and all of that. And so they're actively working against the United States of America, and that's what has to be stopped. And I so support you on your position on the Department of Education. And this pedagogy has gone, it started in our teaching institutions, now all the teachers have been indoctrinated with it. And so now even on the school level, like you can take out the head and you're going to still struggle, because the people who are choosing the textbooks are choosing very bad textbooks on purpose, because they believe that those textbooks that are very bad are somehow good, because their definition of good and bad is completely different than yours and my definition of good and bad, Sheri. And I think that's where we, you know, that's what we have to understand. So everybody should go to USPI.org. Is that correct?
That's right. That's right.
USPI.org. But first, go and watch the movie, because I think you'll also be uplifted, because you'll see that there's a light at the end of this very dark tunnel, and that is the home education movement.
Absolutely. Yes. And of course, it's grown, as you know, leaps and bounds recently. And even in the minority community, I understand that about 41% of the growth is with Black families. So, you know, it like Common Core, if you recall, when we were fighting Common Core, we were accused of being, what did they call us? Suburb moms or something like that. Suburban white moms. That's what they accused all the people.
Oh, that's right.
Common Core. But with critical race theory, if you see the explosive videos all over Facebook, it's Black families, Hispanic families, Asian families. Nobody's happy with what's being taught now, and that's why the movement has grown so strongly. And it is a beacon of hope, and parents are getting their kids out. And that's what the storyline in the film is about. You referred to my daughter-in-law, April. So April is a young millennial. She's married to my youngest son, and they've blessed me with two precious grandchildren. And so when she first started working for USPI, I gave her required reading, because if she was going to work for our organization, she needed to understand the issues.
Of course.
So she started reading and, thought, oh my gosh, this sounds crazy. How did I not know all this? But she learns along the way. And that's the storyline of the film, is her study and interviewing the experts and learning for herself what the truth is, and deciding to homeschool my grandchildren, because she says there's no way in the world she could entrust these government schools to the upbringing of her children.
Right. And God bless her for that. And hey, send her down to my conference. She'll learn a thing or two, maybe. Although she already knows a lot, clearly. And you can know a lot too if you go see the movie Truth and Lies in American Education. Just go to truthandliesfilm.us, and that'll do it for us. Sheri Few, thank you so much for coming on the program. I'm your host, Sam Sorbo. This is the Sam Sorbo Show.